Let's check in with Turning Point's White House correspondent Monica Paige at the White House. A lot going on, but again, I repeat myself because that is at the White House means there's a lot going on. Monica, I would love to ask more about what this over the weekend, last Friday, and then obviously through the weekend, talk about Putin, Trump, Alaska meeting. What do you know? What are some insights that you've got from the White House? What's that going to look like? Anything on your end? Go for it.
Yeah, Jobob, I know last week we were talking a little bit about what this meeting would look like. If the president has to meet with Zelensky first before he can meet with Putin, or there were a lot of rumors circulating last week, but it's been confirmed the president is traveling to Alaska. That will be the meeting place. Um, the president seemed very happy that Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to come to American soil to have this meeting, instead of like a third party location or him traveling to Russia himself. But it will be held this Friday. The president leaving here from the White House early, around 6:30 a.m. Eastern time. That's what the tentative schedule looks like as of right now. And the president really just wants to sit down with Putin and say, listen, you got to stop this war. You got to stop the killing and try to find some kind of end to this war. Because right now it seems very open ended. Every time the president speaks to Zelensky or tries to speak to Putin, somebody ends up ramping up one way or another. So he's hoping that he can talk some sense into Vladimir Putin. Perhaps even later after this meeting, we'll get on the phone with Zelensky to kind of tell him how the meeting went and then talk to European leaders as well after meeting with Putin to talk to them about, any potential economic sanctions that they want to place on him if Russia's going to make any sort of progress
Mhm.
in ending this war. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the end game here is to either get Vladimir Putin and Zelensky in a room together to talk it out or have a trilateral meeting with all three of them, similar to how we just saw on Friday with Armenia and Azerbaijan and President Trump. That peace deal kind of wants to see the same sort of thing happening between these three nations, including us. But listen, as of right now, the president is very dead set on putting an end to this war. He's reiterated a number of times this is a war that should have never happened.
Mhm.
And he seems very hopeful and seems very positive.
Yeah, there's so many things that he's outlined in the press conference this morning about all the peace deals that he's been able to broker, which is great for really everyone. But yeah, this one will be a really interesting thing to keep an eye on. Speaking of that presser this morning, you were in the room. You mentioned it gets a little hot in that room, especially when there's so many people in there. We talked about President Trump taking over the DC police earlier in the show, but as a person who lives in Washington, DC, how do you as a resident feel about this?
Yeah, it feels great, Joe Bob. I mean, it feels like finally somebody's doing something
Mhm.
about the lawlessness, the violence, the crime that we see. And it really gets ramped up on the weekends, as you can imagine. The city really putting in place curfews. Nobody even really follows the curfews at the end of the day.
Huh.
And a lot of the residents here on the ground don't seem very happy about the president's federalizing Washington, D.C. I've seen a couple of videos on social media circulating saying, we don't want this, police are always taking action. But at the end of the day, there's only so much the police can actually do. And by the president invoking Section 740 of the DC Home Rule Act, this is going to actually recognize that crime is an emergency and start to deputize the National Guard, try to actually make some progress in helping keeping our neighborhoods safe. Families travel here. This is our nation's capital. You not only have guests from different countries visiting the president, but you also have families. This capital is a
Mhm.
reflection of the United States, and the president recognizes that. And it just feels kind of like a sigh of relief. It feels like a weight lifted off our shoulders, especially as a woman living here in this city. I
Yeah.
feel like maybe now I don't have to keep my head on a swivel, hopefully. But listen, it's going to be very exciting to see more law enforcement presence, especially National Guard, a heavily presence of police here. So all fingers are crossed. I think everything's going to be good now that President Trump has stepped up.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Whether or not you think it's necessary, it's hard to argue. Okay, more people out on the streets late at night, law enforcement wise, is worse somehow for me walking around DC. I
Right.
think it's just I hate Trump and everything Trump does
Yeah.
is bad because I hate Trump. Monica Page, Turning Point's White House correspondent. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.